first, again, we're going to go pretty much in just the order around the table clockwise, so we can keep it fairly organized. When did you decide you wanted to be a cop, and why did you join the police force?
No, as a kid, as you know, we feared the police, and I've been beat up by the police unjustly twice. So I was that person at the party that would antagonize a cop, asking, well, why do you why do you want to, why is it happening like this? I was that guy at the parties until I became a police officer, and then I learned that there's a flip side to that coin.
So you sold out?
No, I didn't. I got my eyes opened. Let me just say that. I wanted to move back to Chicago, so I applied for the Chicago Fire Department, and in the meantime, waiting for them, the police department was hiring. I was one of those people that hated the police before becoming the police. So I accepted the job with the intention of going through the academy and the fire department hiring me, and then I was going to leave the academy. The fire department never called, and 25 years later, I was a police officer. I retired. I started out on the west side of Chicago, which is one of the worst sides of Chicago, and I moved from the west side over into the Woodlawn area, and from Woodlawn area I moved into public housing. From public housing I went to the Humboldt Park area. From Humboldt Park I went to being an undercover narcotics officer. From undercover narcotics I went to gang investigations, and from there I was promoted to sergeant. After being promoted to sergeant, I went into community policing, which was not my thing, but I learned more there than anywhere else. And from community policing, I went back to gang investigations, where I retired from.
I actually thought I wanted to be a firefighter at first. And then like the 11th grade, me and my friends were climbing some big tower over there by College Grove, and I realized I'm afraid of heights. And so I said, better leave a change.
That rolls out for you.
So I went to Miramar College. They had a law enforcement program, and I go, I'll take some classes, see if I like it. I seem like I'm going to like it. And I did right away. I started liking it based upon the classes. I didn't have any friends, relatives, anybody in law enforcement, and it just went from there, and that's how I ended up getting involved in law enforcement. And then I worked in gangs, narcotics task force, sex registration unit, Northern Division, Southeastern Division night team, and my last assignment was backgrounds the last 2 years, where I was actually hiring people that came on the police department.
Awesome. What about you, Derek?
So this is amazing because I've got two guys here that one was a firefighter, one wanted to be a firefighter, and after I had been on the job for a couple of years, I asked my dad, who was a cop, why didn't you tell me to be a firefighter? And he looked at me and he said, well, why would I have done that? And I said, well, it's very simple, because now I've worked around these guys for 2 years. I'm like, they don't do a whole lot, and everyone loves them.
I saw Derek at the field. Look at Derek. He looks like a freaking redneck. I mean, he looks like, except then he had chewing tobacco. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, he was straight out of Hillbilly U. Just seen American History X, and I see this guy. I hated him. I'll straight up say it. I didn't know anything about him. And so then I see him talking to these two black kids, and like teaching them how to throw and how to catch. I'm like, you don't do that. And I honestly believe he's selling out. He's like just trying to get these two kids. Oh, here he is. He's the white guy trying to get the black kids, the good athletes, on his team. So he's going to butter up the parents, talk to the kids, get them on board. And then then I get mad. Then I see the mom of these two kids come over, and they're talking, and I'm like, now he's sweet talking the mom. And this is, man, I hate people like this. Why are you going to be so fake? And then he kissed her, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I realized it was his wife, and those are his kids. And I'm condensing. It happened over the course of a couple of weeks, but it really did go from judgment to acceptance to genuine love. I mean, I love those guys. Great guy in the community. We hit it off. We agree on virtually everything, but when we disagree loudly, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Derek?
I work for a very large police department in the state of California. I broke in South Central Los Angeles, where I worked for 2 years. Then I moved to El Cajon. I worked primarily road patrol on graveyards. I've done 2 stints in investigations I've been a court liaison officer and an evidence officer. And my current assignment is investigations. What irritates me the most about social media these days is when people that I know, people that allegedly love me,
It's not alleged to do.
get on social media and question police tactics, and I just go, have you ever been shot with a taser? Have you ever been shot with OC spray? You don't know what you're talking about, so just stop. Stop talking. Because you don't know. You don't know what happened in Atlanta?
Well, the guy, he was at the drive-in, he fell asleep, and this whole chain of events. I know nothing.
Okay.
I guess he had a warrant for his arrest, perhaps. I didn't do any specific research, so I don't want to make a
Tony,
statement.
how dare you? I don't believe that, dude.
There's a few different ways that you can look at that situation. For anyone who's never been tased, before you open your mouth, get tased. I've been tased.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying I'm a tough guy, but it made me scream like a
Yes.
Come on, say it. You can say your one bad word here.
like a Tony Lawrence.
Dude, and you know what, dude? You, the social justice warrior,
That you just bestowed that name upon me. Go on.
I find it really hard to believe that you don't know anything about Atlanta.
I told you what I know about
Bro.
him. He was pulled over. You see,
He
no.
wasn't pulled over, so you obviously don't know anything
I
about
don't.
it. Police show up. They deal with this guy for 41 minutes.
I did see the number 41 and just
Okay.
stuff.
And then things go sideways. Things go sideways bad. As soon as they decide to arrest him, things go bad. And now we're fighting. This is my point that I made earlier. Whatever your opinion is of the actions of the police officers, are you also able to say, why were they called?
Yes, I mean, again, the reason I don't necessarily want to get into the specifics is because
No,
you want to
no.
talk about that guy.
The specifics
that guy
are
was wrong.
important.
That guy was wrong at every turn. Is
Okay.
from what I know, he passed out. He was driving drunk. Let's start with that. He
Okay.
was driving drunk. He passed out in a drive-through line.
Okay.
Okay. Wrong. Guilty.
Okay.
Illegal. Wrong. And I'm guessing all three of you are going to say, no, every police officer I've ever known has been perfectly by the book and has never made a mistake and never crossed a line.
As a rookie, I remember there was one. It was just how it was done. There was a big prostitution problem down on Broadway. So what would happen is one of the senior officers would get in a van, go up to the prostitutes, do what's called a field interview, or just write their basic information down. And he'd say, "Get in the van." They'd get in the van. He'd go down the street. Pretty soon he has like 8 or 10 girls in there, and he'd drive them around all night. And you never really thought about it at the time as a rookie, but later on you're thinking that's kind of like kidnapping, because if you don't have any reason to hold anybody.
Do you think anything went on in the van, or do you think?
No, it was a prisoner van, and I don't think anything like that went on.
Okay.
It's just, but it was like common thing. It happened all the time, and you just didn't really break it down until later on when you're a more senior officer, and you're like, how did we do that? Because as vice detective, I'm starting to think, okay, what are these different ways we dealt with prostitution issues? And I started thinking back to that, and I'm going, okay, that was wrong. But it was just so matter of routine. It wasn't like a violent thing. It wasn't.
Now, was the goal to keep them off the streets?
It was to keep them off the streets.
Okay.
We had an investigation that took us to one of our local casinos, and we needed to ask an employee of the casino about one of their employees. One of their employees was a suspect.
In a casino-related crime or separately?
Separately.
Okay.
It just happened to be a casino
Okay.
employee that committed a crime elsewhere. And so we go inside, and I already know my graveyard partner's opinion about the casinos and the people that frequent the casinos. And it's not good.
Was it racially motivated, or just? And it could be casinos. Could be. You could say Asians. You could say Native Americans, or you could just say scummy people.
Scummy people.
Fair.
I tried to control the conversation because I did not want him to talk. And ultimately he talked. And he just kind of berated the guy. Like, not yelling at him, not being derogatory, but his comments were obviously cutting at the business of the casino.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we got the information that we needed and it helped us. And we got back into the car. And I was so angry at my partner, and I just looked at him and said, was that necessary? Was that necessary to talk to that guy like that? This is just a guy doing a job. That's all he's doing. He's doing his job. And I tried to control the narrative, and I told him what I was doing.
Right.
I tried to talk to keep you from talking because I know what your mentality is.
Most of what I'm saying today is strictly my opinion, and it in no way reflects the official standpoint or anything with the Chicago Police Department. So I'm talking about my experiences. I'm talking about my experiences and things that I've seen. So I've been in organized crime for several years. So I did the wiretaps, I've done surveillance, and so I've been a part of investigating numerous police officers involved in misconduct. And that's one of the things to the public that I would like for you to be aware of. A lot of times on the news, people say, why don't the good cops speak out? And part of the reason for that is there's a process for investigating a corrupt police officer. And part of that process is not letting him know that he's being investigated. So why would I run to the news and scream, this guy's selling dope or in bed with the dope dealers, or this guy is this or that, when we're trying to lock him up? So we want to put a corrupt cop at ease. And so I've done numerous IAD investigations. IAD was trying to find a kid who witnessed an officer doing something bad. Nobody would cooperate. They knew that I had interacted with the kid at some community events, asked me to help find him. When I helped find him, I had people I've been working with for 5 years that wouldn't sit in the car with me. If we were on the sheets together, they had the person who made the schedule swap us out, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't back me up. So I'm saying that's a real dynamic, and I wasn't in IAD, I just helped IAD. So that was a real dynamic. And then
Is that common?
when I transferred to my new district, they made the call, hey, watch that guy, he's
I
IAD.
think for me, having a dad that was a sergeant in charge of internal affairs is not well liked.
And why? For those of us who don't know, why?
I think it goes sometimes beyond complaints. I think the perception of internal affairs is that they're actually out to get you.
Now that's interesting.
Which for a good cop, who cares? I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter.
Do you really feel that way?
100%.
Okay. All right.
Why wouldn't I?
No, honestly, if you came, especially you in your Sheriff Gibbons attire, came in and knocked on my door and said, hey, we're going to come in and search your place. And I went, no, you're not. And you go, well, if you don't have anything to worry about, why can't I look into you? Why can't I investigate you? Why can't I check things out? I said, well, I don't have anything to hide, but I don't want to let you in. And is that...
Tony, you now you're talking about search warrants. That's a totally different subject.
Totally different.
I'm not talking about the nuts and bolts of it. What I'm saying is somebody wants to investigate you, the internal affairs, and they want to dig into your records, dig into your arrest reports, dig into your phone conversations, your phone logs. That's okay because it's part of the job.
I can give you an example. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I have 3 complaints of stealing money.
How many times did you actually steal money?
None.
Okay.
Never been a thief in my life. 2 were from search warrants where we recovered a large quantity of cash and inventoried the cash And because this person was arrested,
Screen off your mic. There you
because this person was arrested and they're angry, they filed a complaint saying that we took X amount of dollars from them. And Internal Affairs goes through their investigation and we account for every penny of the money that we recovered. It's there. One individual I arrested was homeless and said that I took $85,000 from him.
go.
So Internal Affairs quickly broke his story down. He said he got a construction and make a long story short, he said he cashed the check at a specific bank that didn't exist. They broke his whole story down and he ended up telling them the truth. He was mad because I wouldn't let him snort his heroin before taking him to jail. He admitted it. But if you look at my record,
You still have 3 investigations.
I have 3 investigations for stealing money. And when you see it on the news, this cop has so many investigations. And without looking into the background of it, the cop is judged.
Okay. Now, again, just to keep everything clear, you were completely acquitted all 3 times.
All 3 times.
So there's no, like, conviction, for example.
I've never stole money.
Okay.
Period.
And if I saw someone who said, we just lost a bunch of money from a giant deal downtown, Officer Hawkins was involved, he's been charged 3 times, and there's some money missing.
He's got 3 complaints
Right.
for stealing money. The whole world knows I took that money. And I never took a penny.
Well, I know you stole money from me when I was a kid.
Actually, it may have been a bicentennial quarter.
That's all right. I'm sitting at a table full of corrupt cops.
And-
Derek, you ever been investigated?
But when you're in that situation,
Because you're white.
it's very hard because it's, as a detective, you're used to doing the correct. I don't care if it's an internal affair investigation or a homicide or a gang shooting or a petty theft. You collect information and evidence, lay it all out, and wherever it directs you, that's where you go. If you back into an investigation, which that's often what happens in internal affairs investigations, that's why I think a lot of people resent them. They try to, instead of just putting the facts out there and seeing where it leads you. If that would have happened in my case, it would have been wrapped up in a week as opposed to 6 months.
Was that the time they were parked outside my house when you were swimming over here?
Yes,
I remember. That's a true story.
that's a true story. They were following me around. They thought I was involved with drug dealers. They followed me around. They followed me to your house.
I remember.
They had a tracker on my car. It was heavy. But the bottom line on that is, in any investigation, if you back into it, so you get the complaint that an officer did something, did some misconduct. Okay, what are the facts? Let's see what happens. See if you can substantiate it or not. If you can't, it's over. And that's in the investigation. And that's the right way to do an investigation. But if you don't, if you think, okay, we're going to try to prove this person did something, then that's where internal affairs has their problems.
That's it.
On my particular department, all the internal affairs investigators are sergeants because they can order you to talk to them if you're a detective. They can do that. So they can order you to talk to them. There's different reasons why they have sergeants involved. And some of them have great deal of investigative experience and some of them don't. They use that as a stepping stone to go to internal affairs, to make lieutenant or to get a preferred investigative assignment.
Yes.
So that's like way, way, way deep down. But the reality is, I'm thinking back to Rodney King. When Rodney King happened, every good cop, other than Rodney King and his close friends and family, hated those officers for what they did. They were like one level below the hatred of the family, and Rodney King actually being the man beaten because you just made every cop's job that much harder. You made it that much harder because of something that happened in LA, and I hear about Rodney King in San Diego. I don't know one of those cops.
Or
I don't know Rodney
Miami.
King. I don't know anyone,
Right.
wherever it is, and it's more prevalent now because of social media. Back then it was on the news, so everybody threw Rodney King. There's a lot of names that can be thrown out now because of social media.
The one thing that I'm heartened about in this whole discussion is that more than ever in my experience, and this is all anecdotal, I have no statistics, but in my experience, the reaction to the officer who killed George Floyd was universal, and it was universally panned by police officers and by, politicians often have to condemn every police thing just trying to keep a thing. But I've seen more police officers and law enforcement officers say, "No, that's bullshit," knock it off. But how does that make you feel when you see something like that? When you see Rodney King or when you see George Floyd?
Some people have ill intentions coming on the job, and some people have bad circumstances that happen that night. But a lot of it comes down to training, because and this is my opinion, this is no
You've made it very
official,
clear you don't
yes.
speak for anyone.
Right. So if you look at the incident in Atlanta, if those officers knew how to handcuff when he was compliant, I would have had those handcuffs on so much quicker. And I'm not saying that I was Superman or I'm super cop, I knew what I was doing, but I knew how to handcuff efficiently. It took them so long to handcuff the man that he sized them up in his head and thought that he could take off. And then you have a tragic outcome. But if they had better handcuffing skills, in my opinion, we wouldn't even be talking about what happened in Atlanta with that shooting with the taser. Same thing with what is it? Is it Mike?
Floyd.
No,
Michael Brown.
Floyd was murdered. That was out and out murder. The incident in New York with the guy selling the loose cigarettes.
Michael Brown.
Yeah, Michael Brown. No, Michael Brown was that was St.
Ferguson.
Louis.
That was Ferguson.
Yeah, Eric Garner.
Garner.
Right. So better training. They could have taken a big guy down and had him handcuffed without putting him in a chokehold. And I'm not judging anybody was there or anything like that. But I'm just saying it comes down to training. And a lot of these larger departments, I can't speak for these two gentlemen's departments, but I will say in my experience, a lot of times Chicago Police Department has you watch a video and they bless you off and you're trained. And it's cheap for them.
Hang on, how does that stand up for
check
you
a
guys?
box.
You guys felt you get more training than that, or does that sound sometimes?
I'm saying some like
No, I just wanna know if
tactical
that's-
handcuffing. I'm just saying, for instance, you learn it in the academy, but 15 years later, if you haven't been in a bad district where you got to do it all the time,
Right.
what's your skills? Doing tactical handcuffing.
I feel like this is what I don't understand about society today is when I watched the video of George Floyd, I was disgusted. I've never seen that in 22 years in law enforcement. I know no department is taught to put their knee on anyone's neck. It's obviously wrong. And now I have friends of mine posting on Facebook, the coroner's office has now come out with this big long report that says, well, you know what? It wasn't the officer that killed him. It was actually X, Y, and Z. And that may be true. But that doesn't excuse the behavior. The behavior and what happened was a man was handcuffed. He was on his stomach. There were 4 officers there. And you had your knee on his neck. That is unacceptable. I can say that. As a police officer, I can say that. Can't you also say, why were they there? Why were the police there? Does it excuse the behavior of the officer? Absolutely not. But can't we agree that...
I doubt it, but go on. I'm just kidding.
Why were they there?
Well, in that case, wasn't it a questionable $20 bill? In the George Floyd case?
Yes.
And is that a call for cops situation?
Obviously it was, Tony, because the police were called. Because there was a crime. Does the crime equal death? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying.
Right. And I think we agree on both ends of the discussion.
But can't you say both? And I feel like from a certain segment of society, me saying, why were the cops there is unacceptable. Well, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter.
It does.
Because,
Absolutely does.
okay, And just on a quick aside, so a protester was killed on a freeway in Seattle that was run over by someone, right? Well, the freeway was closed. Why was the freeway closed? Were they doing construction? Was there an accident? Or was there a protest where protesters were blocking the freeway? Does that excuse the motorist's responsibility for driving up onto a freeway that was closed and hitting two people and killing someone? Of course it doesn't.
Right.
But can't we also say, ultimately, why did it happen? Because
Well, here I'm not gonna agree.
no. Do people belong on the freeway protesting, blocking the freeway? The answer is no. It's illegal.
Where
You're
do
committing
people
a
belong
crime.
protesting? Can we take a knee at a football game?
Absolutely.
And then
Can you stand on a street corner with a sign that says BLM? 100%.
okay,
Can you walk onto a freeway and close down a freeway in the state of California or Seattle? Absolutely not. It is illegal. Does that mean you deserve to get hit by a car and die?
And you don't have to qualify that. At what point does somebody come in to deal with something? My father went to jail, and he went to jail because he went to pray
Tony,
at somebody's house.
don't cheat on your taxes.
Okay.
To give you an idea, everybody thinks that it's black and white, good or bad, you know, and so sometimes there's curveballs that are thrown at you that you didn't bargain for. But so one time I responded to a lady. Can you hear me? I responded to a lady who called and said her grandfather stole her check, her aid check. So when we get on scene, we go and talk to the grandfather. And the grandfather says, if I give her this check, she's going to go out and buy rock. And I have her 5 kids and I won't be able to feed them. So I'm keeping the check. So yeah, we agree with grandfather. The lady calls for a supervisor. The supervisor comes on scene. We tell them both sides of what's taking place, and we agree with grandfather. And he said, wait a minute, the United States government issued her a check in her name. That's her check. Go get the check from grandfather or lock him up.
And your reaction to that?
I had to go and beg the grandfather to give me the check, which he told me no. The sergeant says, arrest him. The man's my height. I'm 6'3". He's 6. This old man is 6'3", and we're trying to be as gingerly as possible to place him in custody. And he's throwing us all over the living room. And it goes up the stairs. It goes through his kitchen. Now we're on the back porch, and my partner had to, take him down. And now the whole community is coming out on us because we slammed the old man to the ground. And that's all they saw, and that's all that was reported, and that's one of my complaints. So, but again, what the community saw, they weren't interested in any type of explanation, and it was not a black and white situation, and initially we sided with Grandpa.
Okay. Okay.
So you're okay with someone coming into your house?
No.
And threatening your family? You're fine
No.
with taking action, isn't that what
Yes.
you just
Okay.
said?
Yes. I'm fine taking action. Okay. I'm not fine with them coming in the house. I'm fine. Go ahead.
Okay. That's what we deal with every single time we come into contact with anyone in the public. Every time. The 2 most dangerous things to do as a police officer: make a traffic stop and respond to a domestic violence incident. Now, I don't do the DV thing. I have, but typically, my department, I don't. All my department does is make traffic stops. That's where cops get killed all the time.
And I know I'm going to take a heat round for this. But
You might get the mic.
All right, okay.
You might get the wobble mic.
Right. Well, okay. All right. Eric Garner had been arrested in that same spot for selling loose cigarettes several times before he was getting arrested for selling loose cigarettes. And that particular day, he didn't feel like going, but he knew it was wrong. He went to that same spot, did the same thing. So I think what my partner here is trying to say.
Oh God, now
is-
they're partners.
No, well, I'm saying. Well, what I'm saying is people contribute to their circumstance.
Yes.
Right, and so, while tragic, and while he should have been given medical attention and everything else, and set up, he's a big guy, and he, ultimately expired. He didn't expire from the chokehold, which is commonly said on the news that he was choked to death, and he wasn't. He was choked and taken down, and he was still talking, saying that he couldn't breathe, if you remember. So the choke didn't kill him.
Okay, I don't want to get bogged down.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that.
I mean,
you contributed to his circumstance.
Yes.
And that's often overlooked with the oversimplistic view from the public.
Fair. That's fair. But what I'm saying is, like Beretta, don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
Both ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I put the pursuit out immediately at about West Main Street when the truck obviously accelerated away, and Abel got overhead. San Diego PD's helicopter got overhead just before we were exiting the freeway on the 94.
Okay.
So they got there quickly.
Pretty quick, yeah.
And as we were going through a residential neighborhood in Emerald Hills, they were awesome. I mean, they were telling us, hey, you've got a dip coming up, you've got, so anyway, yada, yada, yada. Then we came up where there was basically a 90-degree curve in the roadway. And Abel told us, hey, you're coming up on a hard 90, slow down, slow down, slow down. Ultimately, the guy ended up sliding up onto the sidewalk, and my partner almost hit the car. And the driver got out, took foot bail, and I was chasing him on foot. And I chased him for about 40 yards. And as he ran for me, he had his hands in his waistband, which is odd for someone running. You don't do that. And after about 40 yards, he stopped and crouched down and spun and punched his right hand out like he had a firearm. And in that instant, I thought I was done. And because of my training, I learned to move laterally and just, because I already had my gun out,
Right.
because I was chasing him, and I just dodged and punched out and fired one round that ultimately, after I saw the helicopter footage, went right over the guy's left shoulder and ricocheted off of a wall. I mean, I'm sweating right now. I mean, it was, and then as soon as I did that, and I came back and centered him, he put his hands up, and I ordered him to the ground, and he was taken into custody by my partner. I'm telling you right now, brother, when I watched the helicopter footage the first time in full speed motion, you know what it looked like? It looked like from however high they fly,
Right.
it looked like he was running and then turned around and put his hands up. But that's not what he did. But that's what it looked like. That's what it looked like to me as I watched it. It wasn't until you slowed that video down frame by frame where you could actually see what I described to the investigators. It's what happened. That was about 15 years ago. Can you imagine what that would have? Time out, Tony.
I didn't say anything yet.
But you're thinking.
We could smell it.
But you're thinking, because the reality of it is, I'm a white guy. I'm a white cop. He was a black man. He was unarmed. I shot at an unarmed black man.
Now,
Can
what
you imagine?
what I'm thinking, to be very honest with you, is I'm thankful that we have situations where we can slow it down frame by frame. I want you, I want anyone, I want everyone to be vindicated. I want everybody to be substantiated. Is that you as a person aren't going to be, you could have been anybody.
But my incident wasn't wrongdoing.
No, it wasn't. And I'm not saying it wasn't. We don't know. We could play what if or what about, but
Do you think it would have been blown up on social media?
You would be barbecued today. You'd be
100%.
You'd be in jail.
That is my question.
Right.
I had no wrongdoing. At the end of the day, I mean, I get goosebumps when I tell the story and I start sweating because at that moment, I thought I was going to die. And he did it on purpose. You could clearly see it. He acted like he was going to shoot me, and I was scared shitless beyond belief, to the point where I ducked and took a shot at a guy that was unarmed. What I'm telling you is, I would have been absolutely blown up today. Here's another white cop taking a shot at an unarmed black guy. Tony, why is it different today than it was 15 years ago when it happened to me? Why is it different now?
The community paints, or that cop paints the community with a broad brush. The community is guilty of that same offense with police officers. I'm from the ghetto. I'm from the hood. I've been beat up by police officers. I've watched my friends go to jail because a police officer put dope on them and didn't understand that it ruined him for the rest of his life. He was a basketball player, a chess player, and the most mild-mannered person you'll ever meet. And he got raped while he was in prison, and it just ruined his life. He was a good guy, a good kid, and ruined his life to put one piece of crack on an individual and arrested him falsely. So I've seen all that. I know that it's true, but I'm painted with that same brush that they paint all of the rest of the police officers. So I remember the first day on the street, I said, yeah, I'm gonna give everybody a fair shake, and I'm gonna show them how to really treat people and everything. And I saw somebody and I gave him a head nod, like, what's up? And he grabbed his crotch, looked at me, frowned, and spit right in front of the squad car. Said, fuck you, bitch.
hey, that's
that's my first day on the job.
Mm-hmm.
It became apparent to me that when I put the uniform on, I am guilty for everything that this badge has ever done to everybody from the time I swore in. From the time I swore in. It didn't matter. You know my mother's upbringing.
Absolutely.
You know I was raised by your mother and father. So you know what stock I come from. It does not matter. I'm the police.
And
I'm
this
a dog.
and this is coming from a black police officer.
Right. I'm
Are
a
you
dog
freaking
from the
kidding
word
me?
go. So I'm just, so
The guys,
guilty.
the guys that got during these protests that we had in San Diego, you know who got it the worst? These guys, the black police officers, by the 22-year-old white chicks, which, by the way, the majority of the protesters, because while you were there, so was I, in the crowd. The majority of the crowd in San Diego County were 20-something-year-old white girls. And our officers that get brutalized the most verbally, black police officers. Now, what kind of sense does that make? What kind of sense does that make?
Gary, what kind of sense does that make?
I think what happens is you're looked at sometimes as a sellout if you're a police officer. It's just the first thought. It's like you're selling out to the community when you're a black officer. I used to go to schools and talk to the career fairs, and I'd tell the kids, it's probably why they quit inviting me, quite frankly. I'd tell the kids, do you want to know the truth, or do you want me to sugarcoat things? And they'd say, I want to know the truth. one of the things I'd always bring up is if you're not a female or a minority, you might have some trouble when you first start with the police department, because if you're not used to being prejudged by your appearance. So you put the uniform on and people look at you one way, and certain people will look at you, well, an example is a elderly white person might not be threatened by me, and a young minority person might be threatened by me, but I take the uniform off, the script's flipped. Now, the older white person might be threatened by me because now I'm a young black man wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and the younger black person gives me a head nod. I'm the same person. So my whole, I don't want to say it was a game, it was like a mind game for me in law enforcement, was go out, do your job, do the right thing, and let things go as they will. One thing that I can tell you though, that does bother me, and it bothers me with a lot of these media reports, is you'll hear they talk, let's use a tamale guy. You go for something trivial, it's nothing, and it turns into something big. When it's in the news, it's police choked out a tamale guy for selling tamales illegally. Well, that's not what happened. I choked you out or had to use force or had to slam you on the ground because you didn't want to take the ticket and you punched me in the face. So we started as a trivial call, and then I've had calls where it started very minor or very routine, and then you're in a fight for your life. It's the same call, and I've gone on that other call 100 times, nothing happens. And then you go on the one call, so it does bother me when I hear that in the news. When you hear, it's kind of like the perspective. It's sometimes the media, and I'm going to say social media now, tries to make things black and white. It's not black and white.
Right.
I think that's everything.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If you were a cop
Yes.
and you got a call to a 211 armed robbery at a 7-Eleven,
I know what a 211 at a 7-Eleven is.
just saying,
Okay.
okay, 211 at a 7-Eleven, and
Did
you're a
somebody call
cop.
911 to get me there?
No one says 911. It's 911.
I know,
Come on,
but
bro.
it doesn't matter at 7-Eleven.
Okay, so
All right, go ahead.
you show up as an officer.
Yes.
And as you roll up into the parking lot, you see someone holding a shotgun in the face of the 7-Eleven clerk.
Okay.
And then they run out the door and you yell, you turn your lights on and you yell, "Stop, police!"
Okay.
Can you shoot that person? Via California law. Can you?
I don't know what the law is. Are you asking me my opinion, or are you asking me?
I'm asking you for all the social media justice people that want to scream about police tactics that have no idea what they're talking about. So I'm asking you, can a police officer shoot that person?
I've answered again. I don't know.
Well, what's your opinion? I mean, what do you think?
If somebody has an if somebody has a loaded shotgun, who is brandishing at a human being,
But
Okay,
you won't know if it's loaded.
okay,
you don't know. But
Right.
I would.
But you
and
show
I'm not
up.
about me.
Right.
okay,
I'm assuming it's loaded.
Right.
I'm assuming it's loaded.
okay.
He comes running out. You say, "Stop, police." If he does anything other than drop the gun and raises his hands, I wouldn't have a big problem. Not me shooting him, because we already established that I'm not a shooter. But with a police officer, if that was the interpretation of the situation, I don't know the law.
In Chicago, you'd be barbecued.
He's running away. He comes out of the 7-Eleven and runs away.
And he still has a shotgun.
Still have a
Absolutely.
shotgun.
Can you legally, justifiably, in the state of California, shoot that guy?
I don't know.
The answer is yes.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Because-
the answer. And Kamala Harris is now saying instead of are you within your rights to do it, she's now coming up with legislation saying was it reasonable or not reasonable. Reasonable to do it. So she, legally.
Okay, let me flash answer as soon as would you shoot that person? That situation, you just rolled up, he's running away. Yes or no? Shoot.
I have chased people in that situation numerous times.
And did you shoot?
I'm not going to talk about my shootings.
Okay, no.
I will tell you. There are times I did not shoot.
Theoretically, right now, would you shoot?
There were times I did not shoot, judging by body language and everything else.
Right.
And I was able to use shielding, cover distance.
Well, would you shoot?
I've had the same situation with a handgun at a gang party, and the guy was running with the gun, and we're chasing him. I'm chasing him, and he's already has his back to me, and I had it in my head, if he turns around and points it at me, he's going to get shot. And that's what I was talking about. I was going to say earlier when you said how you defend your family.
Right.
My mindset in every time I've been in a shoot don't shoot situation is I'm not making the decision, the other guy is.
Right.
That's fair.
I'm going
Derek,
home,
would you shoot?
you know.
I don't know. You know what, Tony? I don't know.
You got to go by body language, situation.
I don't know, but that wasn't the question that I asked you. I'm saying lawfully.
I don't know. We've covered
The answer,
I don't know.
Well, the answer is yes, because in the state of California,
But just because
when you are in apprehension mode
Yes.
of a fleeing felon that has committed a violent and atrocious felony, you can shoot them to apprehend them.
But those people in the middle are being pulled by the media, and the media has an agenda, and the media portrays us in a specific light, whether it be right or left.
And I want to get to solutions. What can we do? What can we do to mend the relationships between the law enforcement community and the people who feel anti-law enforcement?
Yeah, the bottom line is that the public needs to be aware of the training that we go through. I mean,
I agree. So maybe that's part of it.
But one of the first things that happened after the George Floyd incident was you have all of these departments banning the carotid choke. That had nothing to do with the death of George Floyd. It was
a sweeping overreaction. It's the same thing. Why do we take our shoes off and get on an airplane? I mean, there's people panic and pass legislation to try and appease everyone, and oftentimes.
But you know what? But shame on the police departments, quite frankly, that did that, because it.
Right, but you have to understand. You have to understand from a patrolman's perspective, what departments did was absolutely sell them out. But from the department's standpoint, they have got to wrestle the community and get them back on the team. They've got to offset lawsuits. They've got to stop the consent decree. So by doing a token gesture of banning a carotid chokehold, it's ridiculous. And let me explain what I mean by it's ridiculous.
What part of we're wrapping up didn't you guys understand?
Well, I'm saying
Because
I can pull my gun out and put a bullet on your nose and you're out of there. Does it make any difference if I shot you or choked you? If I felt my life was threatened and I had to take action to defend myself, does it make a difference if I shot you, stabbed you, or choked you? Dead is dead.
Do you think the guy who had his knee on George Floyd's neck meant to kill him? Do you think his intent the whole time was, I'm going to kneel on this guy till he dies?
I hesitate to say what someone's intent was, but it was criminal.
But my
to
point is,
I don't know.
Yeah, but there've been times where the chokehold has accidentally turned into something. No, you're not going to accidentally shoot somebody.
Accidental shootings happen all the time.
Unintentional discharge. The example you just gave me, where you could put a bullet in my neck, which I personally feel kind of threatened that you would actually.
But I'm just saying, unintentional discharges, whether you know it or not, happen all the time.
They do.
And I'm saying to you, so do we now ban guns?
Yes.
Some
No,
police.
of course not.
And I'm saying it's ridiculous. It's a token. It's a symbol. And we need to get to the substance.
So
of
for
it.
the next time, let's think of what's not a token.
We're not done.
We're done. We're done. I'm tired. It's my house, Gus.